Illey has been dropped from Optic Texas. Today I'm going to be talking about why this move happened, what I think of it, and where I think Illey should go for the rest of the season. Let's get right into it. If you enjoy the video, make sure to drop a like and comment down below your initial reaction to the news. Playing some CD and Mosh Pit in the background here. Joining in the game, we're down 100 points, but that's alright, we're going to absolutely fry the lobby. Let's get right into it. Last week was the first time we saw the new Optic Texas roster perform on LAN after all the roster changes and Scump's retirement. To be honest, they didn't have a bad event at all. They finished 4th, losing to LA Thieves in the losers semi-final. And again, they could have actually won that game with a few mistakes from Hook and Shotzi stopping them from getting that win. But overall, LA Thieves did look like the better team that tournament, so it was probably more deserved anyways. So I think the team decided that they wanted to pack a punch here, and they decided to get rid of Illey. Now, we don't actually know the reason why this change has happened. We're not sure if it was an internal issue or if it was a skill issue, performance based or anything. But I think from one thing we can tell just by overall the scene, Twitter and the reaction of all the pros is that this was quite a sudden change. And again, very, very reactionary to the tournament. So in my opinion, I think it's definitely performance based. Especially considering Illey and Shotzi have been teammates basically since they started their career together. They really got along with Hook, and it seemed like the vibes were at an all-time high just recently as soon as Dashi came back. So if anything, Dashi was also probably the one with a problem considering the recent roster change with him being dropped. So I don't see a reason why Illey would be dropped based on that. So now, before we address the future issue and where Illey can go, let's just talk about Optic Texas's roster and what I would have done in my personal opinion. So although I think Hoot did good, and I like the guy, honestly, I like him as a player, I think he's quite vibey. I really enjoy watching Hoot play. I really think him and Shotzi together play really well, and there's a lot of positives to take to that. But overall, if I'm Optic Texas and I'm trying to compete with FaZe, FaZe is the benchmark here. They're a top 3 team, they're a top 2 team, to be honest. Last year, Vanguard, they got memed a lot, they got trolled a lot for not winning an event, but you have to tip it. They basically got to top 3 every single major. And with how competitive the game is and the teams and the CDL, that is extremely tippable. Their players, no matter what, you have to say they turn up and they get there. They were in 4 to 5 grand finals last year. That is honestly tippable, and you just know that Hastro and Hex want to be in that similar position. So straight away you know that they're trying to build a dynasty here. Now with Scump gone, I just don't think Hook was the right replacement in terms of a legacy player, somebody that they really want to build around in that team. And we all know that in the offseason they decided to go for Pred, and due to LG, Seattle Surge just not really negotiating properly and not holding their end of the bargain, unfortunately they couldn't get Pred. And I think the only reason they went for Hook is because it was a free offer at the time as an unrestricted free agent, and the fact that Shotzi and Illey have won a world champ with them before, it was probably the best pickup to do at the time. Now again, this isn't saying that Hook is a bad player, but I just think if you're going for that dynasty move, you need to upgrade here. And I think going from Scump to Hook is not an upgrade in my opinion. Again, I don't mind the roster, but it wasn't dynasty potential. Now for a second, let's just say we're going to play with these 3 here. Let's just say we're going to keep Dashi as your main AR, we're going to keep Illey as your flex or your second AR, depending on the game, and then we're going to have Shotzi as your main SMG. For your gap pair, in my opinion, there's 2 players that you go for. You either go for London Royal Ravens Asim. He's been on an absolute tear this year, been one of the best SMGs in the game and an absolute amazing player to watch. The reason why I'm not going with a Hydra or someone here, because I'm just trying to find someone that's actually obtainable and realistic. And although we're going to get to Pred in a second, I think the first option could have actually been Asim in this situation. I just think he fits all the boxes. And now he may not slay like a Hydra or a Pred, but the reason why I really like Asim in this team is because of the dirty work he actually does for the roster. A bit like Illey here, he could do a lot of the work behind the scenes that we don't pick up on the KD. And again, I think he'll really get the best out of Shotzi. He's one of the best OBJ SMGs in the game right now, and he's just so tailored towards Shotzi. I think if we had Asim on the team, we would have seen Shotzi hit another level. Asim would have taken the bomb in S&D, which Shotzi has admitted in the past has been a huge problem for him. He likes to make plays, which makes sense. If you have Shotzi in your team, you do not want him having bomb. You want him making plays around the map. So Asim covers that problem, and in hardpoint, he's been an absolute monster this year. Overall, I think they would have been probably the best S&D team in the game if they picked up Asim instead of Hook there, and I just think overall their roster would have looked a lot better. Illey himself, he would have looked like an absolute beast, because we've seen potential from Illey this year where he just absolutely turns up and destroys everyone in the series, and when he's playing like that, they are almost unplayable. It reminds me a bit like a BZ. When a BZ gets going, FaZe look honestly unstoppable, and it's the same with Illey to an extent. Although I'm not saying they're the same type of player, when Illey gets going and he's frying, this Optic team looks extremely scary. And I think with a player like like Asim doing a bit more of the dirty work, it allows Illey to have a bit more freedom along the map. I think right now what we don't see on the stat board is how much work Illey does and the intangibles for the team. As well as being the main leader and the vocal point for this team, this is why the strain on his slaying may not necessarily show in his gameplay. So that was option 1, bringing in Asim, but now option 2, and for me the biggest play, bringing in Pred. Pred, an absolute beast, a top 3 SMG, maybe even number 1 last year. What a player he is, an absolute monster. Rookie of the year for a reason. This guy knows how to play Call of Duty at the highest level. Him and Shotzzy together would have absolutely torn the league. And I think that SMG duo would have just had such high impact. It would have really allowed for more space on the map for Illey to do his thing. If you have 3 Slayers on your team, you have Pred, Shotzzy and Dashy in the same team, then Illey doesn't even need to worry about slaying. He just needs to worry about kind of doing those intangible, fundamental factors that he's currently doing, and just making sure that team's on the right page and playing together like a real leader. And that's all he had to focus on, and I really think this team would absolutely fry. But we do know that Hex did try to get Pred, and unfortunately Seattle just didn't really hold the end of the bargain, so maybe that could have been a potential move for the future. I think because that fell apart, maybe they just had to go for Hook just because of urgency. So although I think that might have been the optimal plan and the ideal situation, unfortunately it just didn't plan out. So now let's talk about the realistic approach here and where Illey can go in the future. For me, there's only one team where it makes sense where Illey should go: Seattle Surge. Just as I mentioned with Pred joining Optic, I think if Seattle Surge somehow manage to get Illey here, they're going to find themselves in a real good situation. This current Seattle Surge roster needs to make a change. They found themselves finishing 12th at the major, coming dead last, losing to Boston in the loser bracket. Just not good enough. With the talent they have on this team, players like Mac, Sid and Pred should never find themselves in the bottom half of the league. They're just way too talented to be there. When you watch Seattle, they're basically guaranteed to lose map 2, and if it gets to a game 5, they're losing that too, and that's just not good enough. In a league this competitive, S&D has to be a fundamental game mode in your team, especially with how inconsistent Hardpoint is as a game mode in this game. You just have to be good at S&D. It really make or breaks your team, and that's why FaZe was so good and won the championship, because they were so dominant in S&D. I think Illey replacing accuracy is almost a no-brainer. I've mentioned this in a video before where I think Illey is basically an upgraded accuracy, and I really do believe so, and this is a perfect example. If Illey joined this team, I honestly think they go from 12 to potential title contenders overnight. I really think that difference would be there. Because if you just look at the game mode and just look on a basis of stats here, their weakest game mode is Search and Destroy. Illey's known for his S&D's gameplay. It's probably his best game mode. So straight away you're improving that game mode by a massive amount. Although I can't take away from accuracy. This guy's a nice man. He clutches a lot of 1v1s. He's been in a lot of clutch situations. Overall, I think Illey's leadership and his S&D skills will really help this roster. He's also been one of the best snipers in the game, maybe even the best sniper this year. So that just adds another level to their S&D game, which they really need. Considering they're on a 10-loss streak, I don't think there's a harm in trying this out. The only problem is going to be, will Hex sell to Seattle after the whole Pred situation? Let's just say they manage to get over that whole situation. This Seattle team will look like a real threat here. Accuracy had the lowest KD on his team in Search and Destroy, where Illey had over a 1 KD, instantly almost double the KD, just really improving the overall game mode here. And then when it comes down to hard points, I just think once again, Illey's very similar to accuracy. I just think he's going to get a bit more consistency out of him. Although I think accuracy is good, I just think his pacing is very slow. With Illey, you can, although his pacing is not exactly Shotzzy's pacing, he can definitely up his pacing in certain situations. And what we've seen, especially this year, is that he has a potential to go absolutely crazy in a series. You saw it against Toronto Ultra, you saw it in the online qualifiers. When Illey gets going, if he manages to get some momentum after him, he can actually take off and they can actually take over some series. And with Mac also doing some of the dirty work, I really think this roster could work and you see a lot more out of Illey. Overall, I just think that the whole move is really random, and I think the best case scenario for Illey here is to move to Seattle Surge. He still gets 2 superstars to play with. He can play with Sib, he can play with Pred. In fact, you know, even Mac's an absolute beast. I think that roster looks absolutely disgusting on paper. Let me know what you think of the team and the overall thoughts in the comments.